Good evening and welcome everyone to the Ravenswood City School District Governing Board meeting of March 10th, 2022. I will open the meeting at 6:31 PM with a roll call. Vice President Charbonneau here, Trustee Alexander here, Trustee Polito, Trustee Bloom.
Here.
I myself am present, quorum is present. We will move on to item number 2, which is the approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I would like to pull 2 items from the agenda, item 6B and item 6K. I won't be voting on those. I'll recuse myself from those votes because I was not in attendance at the February 24th meeting and because I work for Street Code Academy. So
Noted. Do we have any other questions or comments regarding the agenda? As I see none, I will entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Now we will move on to item number 3, which is closed session. Before we go into closed session, we will open the floor to anyone who wishes to comment on any matters that will be discussed during closed session. As I see none, we will enter into closed session at 6:32 PM. Thank you. back to open session. We will resume at 8:25 PM. I will report back on matters that happened during closed session. So for item 3A1, there was discussion and action was taken 4-0. For item 3A2, there was discussion and there was action taken with a vote of 4-0. For item 3A3, there was discussion and action was taken 4-0. For item 3A4, there was discussion and action was taken 4-0. For item 3A5, there was discussion and action was taken 4-0. For item 3B, there was discussion, no action was taken. And for item 3C1, there was discussion and action was taken 4-0. For item 3AD, 1, there was discussion, no action was taken. For 3D2, 3D2, there was discussion and no action was taken. So now we will move on to item number 5, which is from the floor. So if there's any individuals that wish to address the board on any matters that are not agendized, this is your time. As I see none, we will move on to number 6, which is the consent agenda. So item 6B and 6K were pulled. So 6B is the consideration to approve the minutes from February 24th, regular board meeting.
Through the chair, I pulled that because I was not there, so cannot vote. So recusing myself from that vote.
Noted. So I will entertain a motion for item 6B.
I will make a motion to pass item 6B.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Recuse. So the motion carries 3-0 with trustee Shabomaheen recusing. So then we will move on to item 6K, which was also pulled, which is the consideration to approve MOU with Street Code Academy to provide training and tech support to Ravenswood schools. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve item 6K.
I will second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The motion carries 3-0 with trustee Shabomaheen recusing. So now we will move on to the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda minus item B and K.
Through the chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Yep, all those items in number 6.
I will second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-0. We will now move on to human resources, item 7A.
The item before the board tonight is consideration for an amendment to approve the MOU between district and CSEA Chapter 303 to amend the current bargaining agreement to extend sunshine deadline to successor agreement from February 2022 to May 2022. The reason items before for consideration is the verdict of not yet made agreement on negotiations for current year and previous year.
Noted. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? As I see none, I will entertain a motion for item 7A.
I will make a motion for item 7 to approve item 7A.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Now we will move on to item number 8, which is from the business department. We'll go to 8A, which is the report from the district's real property advisory committee.
At our last meeting, the board approved the resolution at 7:22. Alex chair of the committee, and will be presenting that to you before. Before.
So through the chair, I believe the board takes action to accept the report. Not, it doesn't, but we do have an action. Will, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, so on the agenda, it doesn't say that this is an action item.
Actually, on Agenda Online, it is. We did make it an action item, so we can give this opportunity to assure. Yeah, it is. It is. It's an action.
Can we make sure that this reflects what's on the line? This right here, it just says
A report.
receive report. It says receive report.
The agenda item says receive, but under the agenda item type, it is an action item. right here. Under the agenda item type, it is an action item.
Not on. We're on the public website.
Yeah, through the chair, yeah, on the public agenda online, it doesn't say action, which I think it would be okay, but I'm also at the same time reluctant because I don't know if someone would have come to have comment, on the item, if it were public that we're gonna have a vote on, the acceptance. That's the only reluctance here. And I don't really know those.
So just to clarify, so people, the community understands, the agenda online internally says an action item, but as it reflects on the public agenda, it doesn't show that it is an action item in any way, correct?
Check.
What is that? Yeah. And so I'm just wondering what the, I don't know, ramifications of not, having a vote on receiving the report because of the ambiguity.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll
Maybe.
perhaps the board could just indicate verbally support, and we can just record that in the minutes, and hopefully that's sufficient. We can confirm with county council tomorrow.
Solomon, can you turn down the?
Have feedback. To get rid of that, I have to not let this work.
I have a question. Do we have to
Checked.
formally receive it with a vote before moving to 8E to be
No.
able to, okay,
No.
just wanted to make sure.
Right.
So if it is potentially a problem or we want to make sure everything's okay, could we bring it to the next one meeting to formally
Yes,
vote?
I believe we actually did that last year with a different report.
Okay.
That similarly with the board receiving it, the board didn't necessarily take formal action on it because it was the ambiguity of the word received.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on.
Silence.
Thank you.
Sorry, Alex, we kind of ended on an odd note there, but thank you and the rest of the Central Eleven Committee for all your hard work on this over the last
Thank you.
few weeks.
Yes,
Got it.
Say that, we have received.
We have received a report.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 8B, which is the consideration to adopt resolution number 2021/22-16, resolution of the Ravenswood City School District Board of Trustees intention to declare the 2020 Euclid District Office as surplus property. Do we have any questions or comments? Oh, sorry. Will.
I largely don't. This is a resolution to declare and accept sort of the recommendation of the 7-Eleven Committee to declare the 2120 Euclid site surplus.
Got it. Questions coming from the board? As I see none, I will entertain a motion for item 8B.
Through the chair, I'll make a motion to approve item 8B.
I will second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wait, Larry, you have to read. I apologize, trustee Alexander.
Don't get to do my job here. Resolution 2021-22-14. Resolution establishing Fund 17, Special Reserve Fund for other than capital outlay projects. Whereas the Educational Code, Section 42842 provides authority, et cetera, et cetera.
You said -16, correct? On the resolution, it says -16, right? Was I heard-
Yes.
I believe there
okay.
were two resolutions. I think that may have been one on the consent agenda. Fund 17.
Okay, just checking. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item number 8C, which is the consideration to approve resolution 2021/22-17, ordering a school bond election in an amount not to exceed 110 million and authorizing necessary actions in connection therewith.
Over the last few months, the board has been receiving updates and reports on a possible bond. We talked about the public support for the measure. We talked about where we are in our current bond funds for our facilities update, and we talked about some of the financials from prior bonds. At this point, before you, and at the last meeting, we did present this resolution for public review and comment. This represents the district's staff's final resolution to issue a bond this June. Should the board vote to approve this, it would place the measure on the June election.
Questions or comments from the board? As I see none, I will entertain a motion for item number 8C, which is the consideration to approve resolution, so on and so forth.
I will make a motion to approve item 8C, the consideration to approve a resolution 2021-2022-17, ordering a school bond election.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Resolution number 2021-22-17. Resolution of the Board of Education of the Ravenswood City School District ordering a school bond election and authorizing necessary actions. Whereas the elementary and middle schools, including charter schools of the Ravenswood City School District, etc.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on. Moving on to item number 8D, which is a consideration to approve the 2021-22 second interim financial report.
Thank you, trustees. Ed Code requires us to provide 2 financial updates throughout the year. We received the first a few months ago, and this represents our second financial update. In terms of FY 21-22, our initial budget largely resembles that today as would be presented at first interim. There are not many major changes. And as the board authorized us to do several months ago, I think actually reaffirmed the resolution tonight, we are looking to meet our 17% reserve target, and we have set aside $9 million of future use funds. So we'll talk a little more about that, but our plan is sort of spend down our stimulus funds. So we are both meeting our minimum reserves and have set aside additional reserves to kind of land the plane smoothly. Second interim often is a chance to sort of look ahead a little bit. I just wanted to highlight for FY 22-23, at this point, we do expect to become a basic aid school district. And sort of the logic here, I know I've talked about this before, basic aid for the members of the community maybe listening, is a status where you're funded on your local property taxes, not on your enrollment. And what's happened is our enrollments declined over time to the point where our revenue has basically hit our sort of local property tax floor. This does mean that we will be funded at a similar level over time, growing with our property taxes, not necessarily based on growth or declines in our enrollment. There are some sort of interesting implications from that. We've also met with budget owners in their FY 22-23 budget, and we are hoping to have an update for you all soon, just looking about some of the specific staffing changes for next year. So we're going a little bit more into that. So first, just talking a little bit about where we are in our budget for this year. Overall, the budget really looks very similar to first interim. There have been some changes, mostly sort of across the board for the positive. Those changes are, we've received some stimulus funds. That's basically more cash in before we were expecting. We've also received the ELO planning grant, and it's an increase in ACES funding, which is actually offset on the expenditure side as well. The money we had initially anticipated spending last year sort of rolled into this year. We've also received some additional REF funds to account for the raises through the agreement with RTA, and we've also revised one forecast from our rental revenue estimate from La Escuela. On the expenditure side, similarly, kind of no change overall. There's a couple of small tweaks to the paraprofessional lines, the maintenance lines. And then there's a bit of some movement we did, both on the ACES side, as I alluded to earlier, and as well as some work we did on some projects with NGs. It actually says solar panel changes here. It refers to actually the Prop 39 work we did around energy efficiencies. part of the interim. So overall, relatively minor changes from first to interim. It's a little bit of always sort of an art guessing exactly where the budget's going to end. At this point, we basically spent in a typical year about 58% of our year-end actuals. So, we usually spend a little bit less in the summer, and then it kind of ramps up fairly consistently throughout the year. At this point, we feel reasonably confident that we're going to meet our initial budget forecast, which is a modest surplus. We do plan on hitting that at the end of the year and then moving a lot of those funds to Fund 17, and then running deficits intentionally over the next several years to spend down the funds that have been set aside in Fund 17. Speaking ahead to the multi-year forecast, I alluded to this earlier in the presentation, just wanted to reiterate that. And I believe I may have shared this slide publicly before, but our per pupil funding has gone down. So the money we're getting through LCFF has kind of slowly decreased over time in line with our enrollment, a bit of a lagging indicator. At the same time, our property tax revenue has been growing up relatively stably. Over the past few years, I believe Mr. Green talked about this several weeks ago. Ravenswood property taxes have been growing around 10% a year. Slowed off a little bit last year, but it's still been growing pretty quickly. The combination of those two has meant that we kind of crossed the line there, meaning that the red line representing basic aid is now above the blue line representing how much we would get from LCFF. Sometimes we're asking the question, why don't you choose one or the other? Not actually an active choice on behalf of the district. We just take whichever is higher. In this case, our basic aid number is higher than our LCFF number. Therefore, we have fallen into basic aid. There are a couple implications. One is just we are going to have higher levels of overall funding, which is a positive in the short term, but it does raise some longer term challenges for the district. As we take on new students, for example, so for example, next year expanding TK, those students come with an additional cost, but there is no additional revenue for those students, which creates a little bit of a tension for us, right? We do hope to grow our enrollment. We're planning on growing our enrollment, but in doing that, there could be some cost pressure there. There's not sort of accompanying revenue growth. Turning a bit just to talk a little about sort of where we are in some of our stimulus funds. As mentioned, the district's gone sort of out of its way to run surpluses for the last 2 years, and plans to run surplus for this year. Our goal is to take as much of those stimulus funds as we can and put them into Fund 17 with the goal of gradually running deficits to spend down the money in that fund. We're trying to build up a reserve and then consciously spend it down while still keeping that 17% reserve target that the board set in a resolution earlier this year. Part of the goal of that is to avoid the kind of natural quick increase in expenditures and then rapid drop off in expenditures that could result in massive layoffs, big reduction in services if we sort of stuck to the initial 3-year spending timeline. So we believe that this approach allows us to keep that gray bar, which is our expenditures, a lot more level over time. I want to just talk a little bit about some of our next steps in the process here. We've been working on the budget for next year for quite some time. The sort of first step in that is really think about what our enrollment's going to look like, develop a revenue forecast, and then work with budget owners to devise or revise and create their initial projections for next year. And then we've been working together to kind of identify areas of common alignment. Most of the school district budget is relatively stable over time. At the same time, we've been thinking about how to realign the district office. And that's sort of been going on behind the scenes in this work. We are hoping to finalize the preliminary budgets relatively soon to get out in front of hiring. It's not something I think we've done well in the past. And I think it's been a focus of the business office to try and get budgets over to HR as quickly as possible to allow for hiring as early as possible. Once we're able to kind of agree on the overall staffing schematic, we do hope to allocate specific sources to specific funding streams. So we'll work on sort of fine tuning various aspects of the budget, even though the big shell is going to be kind of done relatively soon. The budget is of course due in June, which will be kind of our second or next big update after that. Just want to talk quickly about what we're thinking on revenue for next year. As mentioned before, we are switching to basic aid. We do anticipate a little bit of an overall decline in revenue with that switch, not as big as it would be if we stayed on LCFF. And you can see here, just for illustration, our overall district revenue by major funding areas, right? Black bar being state or local aid, the growing role of the Ravenswood Education Foundation, or REF, which we're slotting in for $5 million this year. Our rental revenue, some grants we've received, and then some other sources. This is not what we're forecasting as our total revenue. This is sort of our base revenue right now. One of the things that, as I mentioned before, we do want to add on some stimulus funds from our reserve to increase our overall expenditures to help bring students back from the pandemic. And we are anticipating an increase in the overall REF funds of several $1 million, $3 million to be specific, to cover some of the compensation pieces, as well as some additional funds we're going to receive from the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant. So our overall revenue is quite a bit higher than what it would be without those other things. Just wanted to illustrate that for the board here. In meeting with our budget owners over the last few weeks, we've summed up to about $40.8 million of total requests. Our total budget target right now, excluding the any kind of raises or increases on both sides, both the revenue and the expenditure side, is about $39 million. That leaves us with about a $2 million hole that we're sort of working on closing. I don't want to alarm the trustees. I think that's a manageable amount we can work down to. The bar on the left does reflect all requests for expenditures. So we are sort of trying to create a big list of possible uses and then navigate down from that. So we do have a plan to sort of resolve this, and there's no need for alarm on this. We're just identifying sort of where we are in the process. In closing here, and I know we worked relatively quickly here, I do just want to highlight that the district is in a pretty fundamentally different position than we were 4 years ago. I don't want to jinx us, but I do want to just call attention to a couple of positives. 4 years ago, at around this time, we were talking about pretty significant cuts, pretty significant layoffs, and that is not where the conversation is today. Overall, our budget bottom line has gone from a small deficit to a modest surplus. Our reserve percentage has doubled. This year, I'm sort of pleased to report, it's kind of hot off the press, but this was our first year with no audit findings in 4 years, which is a pretty good milestone for us. And then thanks to the team here, our federal program monitoring, which you went through earlier this year, last time we did that, 63% of our federal funds were reversed. So of what we expended, 63% was sort of not found to be compliant, had to be returned. And this year, it's every other year we review. So this was the immediate prior and the one this year. 0.03% of all federal funds were reversed. Big credit to the business office team, Allison Officer, and some other folks in CNI. Really that last one was a big milestone. That concludes my presentation for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? As I see none, I'll entertain a motion for item 8D.
Make a motion that we approve item 8D. And thank you very much for the report.
A second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Thanks. Now we will move on to item number 9, which is from the superintendent's office. And we will be getting a COVID update.
Thank you. Through the chair, we'll have Ann Waterman present, but I want to preface that we, for the direction of the board, are going to present to you current information about the conditions of COVID in our area, and then also provide an opportunity for discussion in regards to what we shall do next now that the mandate has been lifted around the masks.
Hello. We can go on to the next slide. Oh, I have the clicker. Yep, I can do it myself. Great. So we're first going to give an update on what are the conditions right now regarding COVID. And there's some good news here, which is that COVID cases, sorry. Yeah, okay. So the good news is that COVID cases have dropped significantly since the January surge. They have, well, as you can see in this chart, they were extremely high in January and have come down considerably. So over the past 2.5 weeks, we've only had 2 positive cases on campus, and I'm knocking on a lot of wood to keep from jinxing us on that. But that is back to similar to or lower than the case rates that we were experiencing in November, December before we hit the Omicron surge. That does not mean that COVID is gone. We should not be declaring victory yet, but we are in a much better position than we were 2 months ago. Okay, so given the declining cases and declining hospitalizations, the governor has lifted the statewide indoor mask requirements. So to be clear, they still strongly recommend masking indoors, but they are in a position, they have decided to let counties and school districts decide for themselves whether or not to require masks indoors. And of course, that happened already for for businesses, et cetera, but schools were delayed until after this Friday for that mandate to be lifted. So we're in a position where Ravenswood can decide if or when we would change our current policy, which currently requires masks indoors and outdoors, given our local context. So the state says you have the right to make the decision based on your local context. So where are other districts right now? It's a mix. So at least as far as the latest information that we have, and some of this is changing literally as we go, San Francisco Unified School District, Los Angeles, and San Diego had all said they were planning to keep the mask mandate. We were still waiting to hear on local districts like Mountain View, Wisman, and then those dropping the mask mandate include a number of the local districts in the peninsula and in San Mateo County, like Menlo Park, Palo Alto, Woodside, Portola Valley, Sequoia Union. What I would point out is that if you notice, there's a pretty significant demographic difference between the population of the student body on the left of San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego than some of those on the right in terms of, and the reason that matters is because we have throughout COVID seen a difference in case rates and vaccination rates in communities, predominantly communities of color or lower income communities, despite great efforts to try to address that. And so that is part of what is driving some districts to say we're in a different condition than others. So one quick note, when we talk about mask mandates, I wanted to clarify, outdoor masking requirements were actually dropped by the state and county last year. And the reason that they dropped these was because the research was showing there was very minimal chance of transmission out of doors because there's just so much airflow going around that it's challenging for the virus to be transmitted. We did require outdoor masking. We have required outdoor masking as a district. The reason we did that is because in the fall, the state said when you're reopening, students can stay on campus if they're exposed, if they're eligible for modified quarantine. The only way they're eligible for that is if they were masked when they were exposed. And since we couldn't tell necessarily if 2 kids were hanging out on the playground next to each other with their masks off, we said, look, we don't want to risk that. We want to make sure that kids can stay on campus. So that's why we said masks be required outdoors. So it's important to note now is that within the past couple of weeks or month, the state has changed their requirements around the ability to stay on campus. They now have what they call a group contact tracing approach. And under that approach, which we're using now, it doesn't matter whether someone was masked or unmasked when they were exposed. They're still able to stay on campus. So we just wanted to clarify because masking, depending on the different conditions, people may just say masking, but there is a difference in the context around outdoor or indoor masking. So wanted to review what are the current mask requirements in Ravenswood right now in our COVID safety plan. So first, students and staff are required to mask indoors. Students or staff are required to mask on a bus or van or transportation coming to or from school. Students are required to mask outdoors, as I said, to be eligible previously for that modified quarantine. And visitors are required to mask indoors and outdoors. So that's what our current plans are. And of course, there's some state exceptions to mask requirements. Those are in the fine print, but that's generally what's required. If you're under 2, if you have a disability that would prevent you from doing this, so there's some exceptions. So we then wanted to talk about, given this, and given that the board knew we wanted to discuss this and get input from the board on the mask requirements within Ravenswood, we wanted to share information about what the current conditions are in Ravenswood on some of the major factors. So first is, what's the case rate? So the county overall is at low risk. However, EPA has been an outlier in case rates throughout the pandemic. So if you look at the right, that's actually a chart of case rates over the last 30 days by census tract. If it's darker blue, that's a higher rate. If it's paler or lighter, like the tan or the kind of gray, that's a lower case rate. And as you can see, EPA is still among the highest new case rates in the county. Again, this has all come way down from the surge, but they are still higher. So, and the numbers, when we look at the census tracts, Ravenswood has 98 COVID cases per 10,000 in the past 30 days. Couple comparisons: Redwood City, San Mateo, Burlingame, they're at 52 to 73 cases. And Atherton, Woodside, Belmont, they're at 30 to 52 cases per 10,000. So we are still on the higher end of cases within our county. The next thing that people are looking at is vaccination rates. And so very proud of the efforts that the city and that the district and others have taken to boost the vaccination rates within our community. However, they are still among the lowest in the county. So we're at just shy of 90%, 89.2%. And as you can see from this chart, there are a number of communities that are just not quite at, they're at that below or just over 90. And then there are a number that are at practically 100%. And if you notice some of those on the left that have a slightly lower vaccination rate, we've got East Palo Alto, Daly City, South San Francisco, North Fair Oaks, West Menlo Park. We've got some others that they're not as high on the vaccination rate. When you dig deeper into the numbers, what's really driving that is the vaccination rates for 5 to 11-year-olds is the biggest driver of that. When you start to look at the rates for over 16, over 65, great. Over 16, really pretty good. Even over 10 or 12, I think in EPA, it's somewhere around 95%. So this is the bigger driver. And when I'd spoken with someone at the Ravenswood Family Health Center a couple of months ago, they were saying they saw this getting 5 to 11-year-olds vaccinated as being kind of a slow burn. It's going to take a little longer to get everybody in there. So that's one of the drivers of the vaccination rate difference here. So then we wanted to say, well, what does it look like for our actual students? You know, how many of our students are vaccinated? We have a data challenge here. We don't yet have the ability to just pull it from like a state database. We do have that for some, but that hadn't been in place for allowing it to be super easy for districts to pull data about their students' vaccination rates with. So we're relying on self-reporting. And unfortunately, we have just over 20% of families have reported to us that their students are fully vaccinated. I am confident it's higher than that, right? But we don't know how much. And so if we look at the, pull it out and look at the middle school in particular, where we had a lot more response and a big push because to participate in extracurriculars or go on field trips or school trips, the middle schoolers were having to provide proof of vaccination in the fall. We're just shy of 50% have given us proof of full vaccination. Other districts have some much higher student vaccination rates. So we know Menlo Park shared that they had 74% of their students vaccinated. So the challenge right now is, especially at the middle school at the elementary schools, for us to get our families to report to us whether students are vaccinated or not. So with that, one concern that we wanted to communicate is the need to communicate any changes to families, staff, and partner organizations. So this was, when thinking about families, what we're hearing from families is, you know, some folks are excited about getting rid of masks, right? I think we're all excited about that when it happens. But there are also a number of families that are quite concerned and nervous about coming onto campus without masks being required. And so there is a concern that we make sure that families have a chance to know about that and make decisions based on that. For example, if folks said, I'm nervous enough, I would like to go to do independent study, we would like to be able to give them time to think or consider that. we wanted to make sure staff have time to be informed and process the changes, and also partner organizations. We have a number of partner organizations that work on campus with our students. They follow our guidelines. We'd like to be able to give them time to know what our changes are so that they can implement them effectively with our students as well. So that was one consideration as well. So this led to overall a staff recommendation around how to respond to the change in mask requirements. The recommendation for staff was to keep our current policy for 2 weeks while we monitor data and engage the community and give a chance for adjustment. So this idea of keeping the indoor mask mandates for now, gather and monitor some of the data to look at our case rates and our vaccination rates. And will we get a lot of new information about the city's vaccination rates? Probably not in the next 2 weeks, but we might see that 30-day case rate. That still includes in February where we were still hitting the surge. So maybe in a week or two, we actually see the data and it looks much more comparable to the rest of the county. That'd be great news. It can make people feel a little more confident in the lowness of the case rates. But we'd also like a chance to reach out to families and make a push to get more vaccination cards sent in, so we get to know what the vaccination rate is among our students. We'd also like to be able to just communicate with families students, staff, partner organizations to share that there may be a change coming, and so people can really think about what options there are if there was a change coming. And then the thought was that within 2 weeks at the March 24th board meeting could be a chance to take have taken under consideration again. So that was so those were the synthesis of the current conditions and a recommendation, and would welcome any discussion and any questions that we could answer.
Thank you. I noticed that we have a couple of speakers.
Yes.
Let's go to public comment first.
Rhonda White. And Ms. White, are you speaking as a teacher or as a parent or as an RTA rep?
I was so conflicted by that. Hi, board. Hi, family. Hi, everybody. I was like, if I speak as RTA president, I think I get more time.
Yes, you do.
But since it's an agendized item, I don't get as much time, or I don't get a time clock. I still get 5 minutes, right? So it doesn't matter how I speak, right? Just speak and hurry up because we are ready to go home.
Got it. I hear you. Good evening, board, superintendent, president of the board, members of the community, esteemed Ravenswood staff. My name is Rhonda White. Usually I come before this board and I usually speak as the RTA president. Today I'm choosing to exercise my right to speak as a resident, as a teacher, as RTA president, as a parent, and as a staff member. And so I'm here today to just talk about the possibility of us not enforcing masks at school. I think about the fact that the one constant throughout this pandemic has been the importance of mask wearing and how it has slowed the spread. And the two things that come to mind, I'm not going to belabor this point, is that distance learning did not work for most. I hate this mask. I can't stand this mask. I can't wait till the day I can burn them all and throw them away. But I like being in school. I like greeting my parents and kids in line for drop off. And the idea that we wouldn't have masks on, and then we could possibly have a surge, and then we could go back to January where it was just lost. Some days there were 5 kids in a class. Some days there were 10 kids in the class. Some days we were trying to figure out, do we close the class? There's no teacher. What do we do? So there's 3 months left of school. In 2 weeks, we go out on spring break. That was the last time we had a surge. I'm not hoping for one. I'm actually praying we don't have one. I'm hoping really soon we can call this an endemic and not a pandemic. But I just think it makes more sense for everyone's safety for us to continue to wearing the mask for the next 3 months. It's not the best way to teach, especially if you're trying to see kids' mouth, especially if you're talking about, I got glasses on, I can't see, and all that good stuff. But I would still rather be at school with my students in class, on the floor, outside, with a mask on, because I can be in school and not through Zoom. So I'm hoping as we're making this discussion that we are not considering unmasking. We've got 3 months left. Let's do it for our students, most importantly, and I guess we care about the staff. Thank you.
Ms. Sullivan, Nicole Sullivan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Sullivan. I've been a teacher in Ravenswood for 11 years, or 10 years in Ravenswood, 11 total. I want to keep the mask. A lot of the other staff members that we work with want to keep wearing the mask for a while as well, preferably for the rest of the school year. Just like Rhonda said, we want to be in school. We want our kids to be in school. We don't want to have another time like in January where myself included had COVID, and it was horrible being away from the kids. And then when I came back, then other kids were gone too. And we just don't want that. We want to keep ourselves safe. We want to keep our students safe, and we want to stay in school. The kids that were absent from school for like 2 weeks because of COVID, the learning loss was pretty intense. Like when they came back, they felt so stressed at the middle school because it's like, oh my gosh, they lost so many weeks and time of learning, and we were on a whole different unit when they got back. And we just want to make sure that everyone's safe as possible. So we are requesting that you please consider keeping the mask mandate for this year, and then we can discuss next year when that happens. Thank you.
There are no more speakers.
No, do we have any questions or comments from the board?
I have a comment, through the chair. I also, as parent and board member, want to keep the masks requirement because I think there is some very specific language when we think about the lifting of the mask mandate, right? It is still strongly recommended. That does not mean optional. And it is strongly recommended in high transmission areas. I do know that the pediatric hospital rate and all of that is low. However, if we're looking at the numbers of how many of our students are actually vaccinated, we do not meet the threshold of the average number, which is 75%, right, for it to be safe to be unmasked. And so I want to look at the numbers and I want to make sure that we're making the right decision. I also want to say that after that press conference by Governor Newsom, the Health and Human Services Secretary Mark Galey talked about how each district has to decide what is best for their community. He also noted that the mitigation efforts and the multiple layers of protection, including masking, vaccines, and testing, is what really effectively reduced the risk and impact in the greater risk, like in areas where there is a higher risk. I also want to say that he pointed out that for case rates in lower income communities are 24% higher than statewide averages, and death rates for Black and Latino communities are 17% higher and 16% higher respectively. So I think that as we think about our community and who is in our community, I really want to keep them safe. And so if we are unmasking in schools, then are we creating a greater risk for the kids to be taking COVID home and then infecting the community and infecting those people who have not chosen to get vaccinated? There was another article that came through today, also from the California School Boards Association, about a study done by Duke University where they were talking about how just masking itself, let me find that number, 72% fewer secondary infections, meaning that there were fewer secondary infections of kids who brought COVID home and then infected the community. So even if our kids are not getting hospitalized, even if they aren't getting fully sick, they're bringing it home to their community. And when there was masking happening in schools, there was a 72% chance that they would not do that they would not infect the secondary community. And when they said when they thought about school size, vaccination rates, and other characteristics, it's actually 90% lower infection rates when masking is happening. And so I think we really need to look at these numbers and be very understanding that while science is saying, the CDC is saying we can go unmasked indoors, it's also for people who are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and it's also thinking about the total number of vaccinations percentage-wise across the country, right? Versus in each specific area. And we are not at that threshold at our schools, and I do not think it's safe for our kids and our staff to be unmasked in schools. And I, like Ms. Sullivan said, I do want to wait until the end of this school year to see where we are after the summer. Because there was a surge in March, there was a surge in August, there was a surge in January. And since we are not in an endemic yet, I don't think that we should be considering unmasking. And if our schools really want to be unmasked, then I want to see our number of vaccination rates across like every school, not just the average. Every school needs to be at that 75% threshold or higher. That's what I would consider a somewhat safe unmasking percent. So that is my opinion on this matter.
Any other comments?
Yeah, through the chair, I don't really have anything to add, just wanted to explain my silence. Sounds like what we're doing is with this, going to continue to engage the community, gather numbers, and keep this in conversation, active conversation, but that we're not moving on anything, right? Because I've yet to hear a proposal yet.
The recommendation is to continue masking for the next 2 weeks so that we can consider the data, give our community, our families, our partners, and staff advance notice about what action would take place. If we were to make a decision tonight, families who may want to consider independent study, for example, wouldn't have that opportunity.
Oh, we can't make a decision tonight.
Tonight is just discussion.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, when you said if we're going to make a decision tonight, I was a little confused. But yeah. So yeah, just want to make sure what I heard was 2 weeks, someone's going to come back to the conversation, and then did I see something after that, or just 2 weeks?
We revisit the question in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And we can make a decision there that in 2 weeks, we can make a decision that in a week or 2 weeks, we would, whatever we decide to do with the masks.
Thank you for the presentation. I think my only input that I would add is I visited a lot of the school sites over the last 2 weeks, and I talked to a lot of staff. I talked to some teachers, and I talked to a lot of families that wanted to talk about the mask mandate. And so I do agree with the recommendation of staff for indoor mask usage, but I really want us to dive into outdoor mask usage. Just because if you see kids during PE with their masks on, I just want to be very thoughtful that we're exploring all of the alternatives so that we make a decision that'll be fitting for this community. But thank you, I enjoyed your presentation. So I think we'll continue to wait for more information and outreach so that, whatever is presented is in reflection to our stakeholders. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions, comments? Awesome. Moving on to item number 10, which is a consideration to approve resolution number 2021/22-15. Board member excused absences. I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2021-2022-15.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carried. Oh. Yes.
Resolution number 2021-2022-15, board member excused absences, whereas Ed Code allows us to be absent.
Do you highlight?
Then hereby find that now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby finds trustee Ana Maria Pulido is excused from attendance of the regular board held on March 10th, 2020.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to 10B, do we have any board reports or communications?
Really quickly, because it's really late for the trip. I had the distinct privilege of being able to visit all 4 school sites on Monday because my school had a random vacation. And so I took that time to go to school. And I want to express my thanks to all 4 principals for taking the time out of their days. I know it was kind of last minute, and I really appreciated being allowed to tour around the schools, being allowed to visit the classrooms, seeing some fabulous work going on at all 4 campuses. I got to watch construction going on at the middle school, which is exciting. Less exciting was hearing the construction and seeing students engage with each other is what I think was the most special for me. Being a Ravenswood, being part of Ravenswood for so long. And I miss being a part of the students' lives. And I wanted to make a special visit to the unique learner classes because those are new to Ravenswood, and was immediately accepted into one of the classes. One little girl took my hand and was helping me help her complete an activity that they were doing with their Zoom classmate as well. And again, just the extreme joy that I see in Ravenswood students is incredible. And thank you again to the schools and the principals for having me.
Through the chair, I will also say that I went to the family night, or it was the SSC DLAC meeting at Los Robles, and it was just packed. The whole multi-purpose room, cafeteria, everything was filled with families and kids working on projects. Those Kiwi crates are really hard for parents and for kids. And so it was just great to see all of our community engaged and having fun, and the kids just had so much fun being there as well. And I know business was also done there. So it was a great event, and kids and families really enjoyed being together. So thanks.
Through the chair, I'd like to recognize our lovely superintendent, Superintendent Sudaria, who was recently recognized. You have it right here. You want to talk about it? I was so pleasantly shocked when I saw the message. I was like, what? Okay, yes.
Where
please.
is it? Where is
Yeah,
it?
if you
Where
have
is
it, we could talk about it exactly. Using
Ah.
those words.
Here it is. Superintendent Sudaria, honored by the State Superintendents Association. We are proud to share that our superintendent, Gina Sudaria, was recognized by the Association of California School Administrators as one Region 5's Administrators of the Year, with particular recognition for her leadership in valuing diversity. Superintendent Sudaria will be honored at ACSA at their event on March 23rd.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, you've done us proud, this entire community, in so many ways. Since serving as the interim, and then in the official capacity. And so I just want to say thank you for all the work that you do every day and the heart that you bring to this district and to the work and to the people you work alongside. It's so special to get to be here with you, working with you. And just thank you, because I know the lift is huge. It's crazy. We're crazy. It's hard. So just thank you. So yeah, it was a great reminder of what a great superintendent we have. So thank you.
So as I see no other, the next regular board meeting will be held on March 24, 2022. An open session will be at 7:15. I will adjourn the RCSD governing board meeting at 9:24 p.m.